Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is a bit different, I guess, in terms of content. Um, so I have this computer that I acquired. It's, I think, an old school. Actually, I know it's an old school computer. It's running Windows 7. Um, I hadn't turned it on because it was filled with dust, and I thought before I even attempt to turn it on, I'm just going to clean it out and give it a makeover. Um, Reapply the thermal paste, all that other stuff. Maybe it would have been smarter to have first turned it on and actually made sure it even worked, but well, I decided that this would be more fun. So, yeah, so I took out the power supply and I cleaned it. I also opened it up, which you usually shouldn't do, as it says with many warnings all over the place. Don't remove it. Don't remove this cover and look inside. But it hadn't been turned on. That's part of the reason why I didn't want to turn it on first or give it any juice, because I just wanted to be able to open it without really any risk. Any sort of power in any of those capacitors is long gone. This system is from like 2000. I don't even know. I don't even know what model it is. I'll put the model in the description. I keep forgetting to look at what the model is. But anyways, the power supply, it hasn't been turned on in at least 5 or 6 years. So I took it apart, cleaned it out, gave it a nice deep clean. Looks great. I tested it with here it is, with my little doohickey. So I tested it. It works. And so yeah, after that I took out the CPU cooler, took off the CPU cooler, and I cleaned that off, gave it some new thermal paste. Actually, right now it's currently using a thermal pad, but that's just for testing reasons in case I wanted to open it back up and look inside it again. Before I sell the system or whatever I end up having to do with it, if I end up selling it, I'll probably end up removing the thermal pad and putting in some thermal paste because thermal pads are, at least when I bought them, like $3 a piece, and I bought the 5 pack, so I got it for a discount. But even then, it was like $3 a thermal pad. So I'm going to just give it some, I don't know, some basic Cooler Master thermal paste I had lying around. Well, I have lying around. Anyways, I didn't look under the heat sinks because I wasn't sure whether there was some sort of thermal putty underneath there, and I didn't want to have to deal with removing that and getting new one because I don't have any thermal putty, so I just left those on. But they look okay. I don't see what the problem would be with those. They're probably using some sort of thermal pad if they even have a thermal interface in there. So yeah, this is an old school computer and I have no use for it because even if I were to put a graphics card in this PCI Express slot, it probably wouldn't even be that good for gaming. I don't see why it would be. And I'm also worried that these PCI slots would get in the way of a 2-slot graphics card of any real power. But given that this thing only has a 6-pin PCI Express power, or just PCI power, I suppose, probably couldn't even get anything more than like a, I don't know, 6 something, 640, 650. I'm not really sure about any graphics card before the 980. That was my first graphics card. I didn't grow up in that time period or build computers in that time period. Anyways, so yeah, you have all 4 slots filled with this DDR2. I think it's 833 megahertz. I'm not sure. I'll check and actually I can look at it right now. It's 800 megahertz DDR2 2 gigabyte dash 800. So yeah, I didn't even look it up. I'm just assuming that's 800 megahertz because DDR2 is only 800 and I think 1033 megahertz, I think it is. So there's only one it could be in. Well, it was by the name of it, I think quite obvious. It's made by ASINT. I've never heard of them. Anyways, and the actual processor, I'll put it in the description. I don't remember what it was. It was, I think it's some sort of i5, but I'm not entirely sure. I'll put all the details in the description. There's just some sort of 220 watt power supply. One thing about this system that annoys me is that it's not even the system's fault. When I was cleaning out the power supply, I snagged these cables with my shirt and I pulled it onto the ground. And I was cleaning it out outside because it was a nice day and I didn't want to blow dust all over my office. So yeah, I was blowing it out outside with some compressed air, and I put it down on top of a trash can and it fell to the ground. As far as I can tell, it only has minor cosmetic damage where it impacted on this other side down here, and a little bit of warping along the housing. I did test it after that, and it seems to be fine, but it might also be fucked up. Then again, it is like a 10-year-old power supply. It's only 220 watts, so if it ends up biting the dust, I don't really care because I don't think anyone would really want it. Probably couldn't even get much for it. Unlike, say, something like old RAM, where you could get actually a fair amount of money from it. People buy that kind of stuff for reasons I can understand. In terms of the rest of the system, we have a 1 terabyte hard drive. I don't think I was able to get a good look at it. It is a Seagate, and I'm not sure what the RPM on it is, but I'll put that in the description as well. I'm not expecting it to be fast, even if it's like a 7200 RPM hard drive, because yeah, it's a hard drive. It's a hard disk, I mean. It's an HDD, so yeah. If the system ends up booting and working, I might put an SSD in here, just a boot SSD, like, I don't know, 250 gigabyte or 128 gigabyte. Shouldn't cost that much. I could probably get one of those, like 128 gigabyte Kingston SSDs or whatever for like $17. In terms of this, it's just some sort of disc reader. I think it's read and write. It says over here DVD multi-recorder. But I think, I don't know, I'm not even going to put it in the description. It's just some sort of disc reader. I think it reads and writes though, which is nice, I guess. In terms of expansion, there's another bay here to put another drive, at least if you want to connect the drive and not just have it dangling like some people would have like an SSD just dangling here. And then there's also another 5¼ inch drive bay, which you can pop out this for. And then this is interesting. I didn't really know what this was, and I looked it up. Turns out that this is, as far as I can tell, this is a mechanism if you wanted a hot swappable 3½ inch hard drive, which is a very interesting concept. And in the upgrade path, I might end up doing that. That might be fun to have like a little hot swappable hard drive. Not sure why I would do it, but it would be interesting. I'll probably just leave that there though, because I don't really see a need for that. In terms of the front I/O, it's actually not too bad. I mean, for the generation. You have 4 USB 2.0s, I think those would be. I don't think they're 1.0s. I think the black means that they're 2.0s. Sorry about the light as well. I don't really have a studio, but oh well. This I looked up is a bit of a weird one. It's like an expansion slot, so you put like an expansion thing in there and then like a hub. It's a very proprietary and specific thing. I don't know why you'd need any more I/O. I mean, this thing has 10 USB 2.0, so I don't see what else you could really get with it. And it has a card reader. I'm not entirely sure what kind. I'm going to go grab the front panel because that actually has all the names for things. The front panel is actually a really nice one. It's a very nice front panel. Some of these front panels you find on computers, they have all the I/O connected to the front panel, so it's really difficult to disconnect. But for this one, it's just this one little 2-pin Molex Molex type connector for the front ASUS to Glow. I may or may not actually plug that back in when it's completed, because I don't trust Molex type connectors, little 4 pins. As you shouldn't, because they're Dr. Evil's connector of choice, as David says. But if we lift this up, this is a SD card and MS. So, yeah, this is the SD card, and this is MS. I'm not exactly sure what MS is. And then interestingly, this one also has a gap here, but there's nothing connects to this here gap. So I've seen this port before, but I'm not entirely sure what it is. I think it's a I think they call it like a 1333 connector or something like that. I'm not entirely sure. If anyone knows, you can post it. I don't remember what its name is, but it's some sort of connector. But it doesn't have one here, so I don't know what its purpose is. I guess this particular model didn't make use of it or something. But anyways, and then the drives open up like this. What else? So yeah, in terms of the back, in terms of the rear I/O, VGA, DVI. I think this is DVI-I, but I'm not entirely sure. Two USB 2.0s and then another two USB 2.0s with a. I think it's a it's a. Is that a combined? Yeah, it's a combined PS2 port for a keyboard and mouse. SPDIF out. So I think this is. I don't remember what it's for. I never used it, but on any computer I've ever had. But it's for some sort of like home theater stuff. Ethernet jack. I don't know what it is, but I'm gonna assume it's 1 gigabit per second because I don't know why it would be anything better. And your various assortment, your various audio jacks and whatnot. In terms of what I plan to do with this system, that's the real question. I could, of course, sell it as it is once I fire it up and wipe the drive, because it has like old school stuff on here. Wipe the drive and sell it, but I probably wouldn't be able to get much for it. Alternatively, I could just scrap it, and what's sad is if I scrap it, I'll get much more money for it because I can just sell each one of these. I mean, I've seen on eBay these sticks go refurbished for like $100-something. So if I can claim that they're refurbished because I tested them, I think that basically means all that refurbished actually means is that it's been cleaned and tested. So I might be able to get a good amount of money, and then the CPU as well, possibly. Can reuse the heatsink for a different thing, possibly. And yeah. And then probably throw the power supply into the recycling, because who wants it? Probably not anyone. Give this away or sell it or whatever, this drive. Who uses those anymore? And then, yeah, take this and put it into another one of my various systems I have. Reuse the various SATA cables and whatnot. I could scrap it and use basically everything, including the case actually, except for the motherboard and probably the power supply, because this is who wants a 220 watt power supply, especially given the connectors. One thing about the power supply that's a bit interesting is that I'm surprised at how few Molex style connectors it has. Now I'm calling them Molex style because they're not actually Molex as far as I'm aware. They're actually just a 4-pin that people call Molex, but they're not actually Molex. There's some other kind of name for them. It only has 2 and they're daisy chained. So it actually has 4 of these SATA powers, which is quite interesting. And then it has a CPU 4-pin, wherever that is, and then actually let's just go through the cables. So we have this 6-pin PCI Express, or just PCI power. I'm not going to use that unless I upgrade it. If I end up upgrading it, just for fun of course, because I wouldn't make any money on it, I would get, this thing can hold 16 gigabytes max RAM, so I get 16 gigabytes of the 1033. Sorry about the pounding, that is my brother, if you can hear that. Sorry about that. And so yeah, I mean, if I could upgrade this RAM, and maybe even upgrade, well, I'll probably keep the CPU. Just upgrade the RAM, sell this RAM, and then use the money to buy new RAM. It might actually end up equaling itself out somehow. And then getting a little dinky graphics card might be hard to find, maybe not, who knows, we'll see. And it could actually be an interesting system. I wouldn't, of course, want to use it or game on it, but it would just be for fun. Anyways, back to the cables. We have these 2 Molex. Again, I'm tempted to not even use these, just to tuck them in here. This is what I like to do for old non-modular power supplies in these style of cases. I just like to stick them over here and just get them out of the way, because yeah, I'm probably not even going to reconnect this thing so that this glows, because yeah, Molex is a fire hazard. Anyways, again, sorry for the pounding. We have 2 SATA on this one, on this cable, and then this one has 4 SATA, and then this little, I don't remember what it's called, but this little 4-pin connector over here. And so it looks like people are going crazy upstairs and screaming and calling out for food and whatnot. Anyways, I'm going to go have dinner, but yeah, I thought this would be an interesting thing for you to look at. I'll do a follow-up video with any other stuff I find, like whether it actually boots. Anyways, this is the beginning of this series, little mini-series. I hope you'll find it interesting, and yeah, I'm beginning my journey into computers, and it's a very fun hobby. So yeah, I will see you next time.